Welcome to the Dream On podcast. I am Travis Gentry here with Julia Gentry.
Good to see you.
Good to see me. So we like to start off the podcast with asking each other a question so you can get to know us a little bit more. My question for you today is, what is your favorite holiday?
I would say your birthday.
Your birthday?
I'm just kidding. I would say Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I love the tradition. Again, you and I aren't like super traditional people, but I love the tradition of Thanksgiving. Like I love that it's about the holidays. Like it's like the turn of the holiday season. I love cooking. I love the house being a mess. I love that it doesn't actually revolve around presents. Sometimes Christmas feels so overwhelming because it's like that narrative. Like I love all of those pieces.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good to know.
What's yours?
My birthday.
Okay. Solid. Well, we're excited for you to join us for this episode where we're going to talk about something that we think is going to serve you no matter where you're at in your journey. And ultimately, we are going to be talking about the power of your choice and how you are one decision away from everything that you could ever want. One decision.
Yes.
How does it make you feel even when I say that?
Empowered.
Does it in this moment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, every day, it's our choices and our actions lead to our outcome, and they're just compounded over time.
Mm-hmm.
So when you reframe it and you look at it of like, I'm one choice away, one decision away, one thought away to that next step towards, is it going to be the end all be all? Probably not, but it's one step in the direction to living out the dreams that God has put in you. And so I think if you stay focused on that, then it's like, okay, even when you hit a dead end and you're like, well, that decision didn't work out. Now you know, okay, that didn't work, but now I need to make a new decision. And it's like the degrees of like, just pivoting or adjusting small increments goes a long way to get you to where you want to be.
Would you say that thought process does that come naturally to you? Like what you're saying to me right now, is that a normal thought process for you? Do you have to really focus on the realities of that truth?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think ultimately, when you feel like you're getting your butt kicked mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it may be, and you're like, it just feels like compounding of like, man, I keep making these decisions or having these thoughts that are not serving me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to consciously think about it and be like, no. Like, what is real? What is true? What is truth?
Mm-hmm.
And all things are possible. And if I have faith as small as a mustard seed, like, we go back to some of the scriptures of like, no, like I know I can. And this is just growing me towards who I need to become.
Mm-hmm.
And so the setbacks are set ups or just learning experiences. But yes, 100%. When you're in the midst of it, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had these moments over the last couple months and this is why it's such a good topic that we're talking about, because everyone experiences it to a certain level. If you're truly pressing into living your best life and the life that God put in you, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's different levels to it. There's new, like you don't come equipped, like in a full package to live out your dreams.
Yeah.
And so there's always like climbing Mount Everest, like in your book, where you go up and then you have to come back down, and you go up and you have to come back down.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have to stay down for an extended period of time where you're like, I'm not getting anywhere. And then all of a sudden you move forward and it's like you went further faster.
Mm-hmm. It's like this gradually, suddenly moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're saying this, because I'm actually, if I could invite you into the process that's going on in my head as you're saying all of these things right now, it's like, it feels a little bit like a roller coaster of thoughts, because to your point of us being tested on these last 6 months, I feel like though the last couple of years they're not been easy, but they haven't been, I wouldn't say they haven't been challenging. It's been a steady burn. But these last 6 months, I would say, have gone from, like kind of, kind of a slow burn to really challenging in a lot of different ways. And it's forced me to ask myself, do I believe that I'm actually like one thought away, one choice away from everything that I've ever wanted? Like it's been the first time that, like, when you start building up truths, like what you're talking about, like if I'm climbing Mount Everest and I'm going towards heaven's reality, so I'm learning all of these things and I'm learning all of these principles and I'm expanding in my mindset and I'm expanding in my spiritual set. And then you hit a moment that you are tested to go, what do you really believe? Like it's one thing when you're learning, it's another when you're tested on what you've learned. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know that there's seasons. Sometimes that could be days. Sometimes that could be months. Sometimes that could be seasons. But it's felt like, okay, like learning, slow burn, slow burn, slow burn. And then all of a sudden you're like, crap. Like now I'm actually in a situation that I am being tested on all the things I've ever learned. And it's inviting me into this opportunity of going, ooh, what do you really believe now, JG? Like, what do you really believe now about business? What do you really believe now about what God's called you to? What do you believe now about processes and systems and people? And like, so it's interesting to hear you say that this topic is one of those things that you're like, yay, you're one step away, one choice away, one thought away until you're actually tested on it. And it's so fascinating to go like in one choice, in one moment, it's true. You're one step away, but dang, like the pressure in that moment can feel like, oh my gosh, this is so challenging. This is so challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and anybody, and we've talked about it over the last like month or so, is that I think a lot of people stop right before the breakthrough. And I think that's where the enemy gets a lot of people, is because it's not easy and you have a lot of resistance before that next level. And we've felt this pressure and resistance and getting attacked in different areas of our life. And some of it were decisions that we made. There again, you have to take ownership for your own actions. Some of it is decisions we made that did not come, in the time that we wanted, or didn't work out in the fullest intention that we wanted. And so we just have to take a step back and look at it and say, okay, what should I learn from this? What did I learn from this? And now I need to move forward and now carry that tool with me and not do it again.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that. So how did you say your right away? What did you say about breakthrough? How did you say it? Wasn't hard.
No.
It wasn't hard, but the way you set it up, like, what did he just say? Shoot, how do you say don't quit before the breakthrough? What did you just say? Rewind that.
A lot of people quit before the breakthrough.
Quit before the breakthrough. Maybe that's what he said. That's interesting to me. So you wonder how many people are 3 feet, the idea of 3 feet from gold.
Yeah.
How many of us are so close to breakthrough? And because we've been tested a week, a month, a year, 10 years, right? There's sometimes like seasons that people, if you think about people in the Bible, Abraham, Moses, like Moses never saw the promised land. And when God says that he's going to give us a dream that's bigger than this life to live for, you look at the life of a Moses who was told, you are going to lead people into freedom. God fulfilled his promise. He just didn't fill it in the way that Moses, if I'm Moses, like I died in the wilderness. You're like, what the heck, God? But if you're looking at God's bigger picture, he's like, no, you were a portal to leading thousands of people, right? So if you're thinking small in like a finite perspective, if I'm Moses, I'm frustrated because I never actually got to go to the promised land. But if I'm looking from heaven's realities, I was exactly where I needed to be. But the idea, I wonder, is how many times that we actually don't go from those wilderness moments in our lives into the promised land because we quit before the breakthrough.
I would say a lot of people.
I will not be known for quitting. I will not be known for quitting.
It gets hard. And there again, you've got to look at what you're going after and just decide there again. Cause I know people that you're like, what they're doing, because they keep doing the same thing and failing the same way. And you're like, it's probably just not the right business or the right way that you're approaching how to lose weight or whatever it may be. And so, but they're not learning. And so almost like God's like, okay, let's start again. Let's start again. Let's start again. like you're not learning what I'm trying to teach you.
Oh, okay. So check this out. So this is now inviting the world into our process. So in this, just what's been more felt like a very, very challenging season where I'm being tested on all the things that I've learned or even find myself teaching other people. I've gone to Proverbs 25:2 over and over and over again, which says, "It is God's privilege to conceal things, and it is a king's privilege to discover them." And the idea here is that God is not hiding something from us. He's hiding something for us to get closer to his heart, to lean in and to learn something that it actually, as a king, me, you, right? People who we are his heirs, that if I actually go and seek things out, it is my pleasure to do that because I'm getting closer to God's revelation, closer to God's heart, not just my will, my way, a Google search. I'm actually forced to learn what you said, what it means to be walking in heaven's abundance. So lately I've gone, okay, where is the enemy hitting us hard? And it's been in this thing of lack. Like all of a sudden, it has just felt like all the areas that we're risking and taking steps of faith that we're seeing this like huge draining happening. So I've been looking at, okay, well, what's the opposite of that? Because the enemy will always hit you in the area that God wants to bless you, right? That he's purposed you. And so this word abundance has come into my hand over and over and over and over and over again. I'm like, abundance, like I would say that I like that word, but I've never sat and really learned what that word means. And as I've leaned into abundance, there's three things that have popped up with this whole idea of abundance. Is number one, it's grace. That abundance is because of God's grace. It's not because you perform or do something the right way or even checked all the boxes, which a lot of us do, especially if you are a dreamer or a business owner or an entrepreneur. You're like, you are checking all the boxes, like you're getting all the things done. God's abundance is outside of that. It's grace. Then it's about authority, which is I have the authority of heaven, meaning I actually getting up each day and going, hell, no. Like, no, most of us are not doing that. And then it's stewardship. And stewardship is, are we actually stewarding, to your point, what we're learning? Are we stewarding the lessons? Are we learning the lessons? Are we like leaning in and actually taking care of the things that have been given to us in ways that are setting us up for even greater blessings? And so I say all of that because it's caused me to look at this whole thing differently, that there's something that God wants me to know here. And it's not that I'm doing something wrong, but that he actually wants to draw me in. So I'm even more aligned with his purposes.
Yeah.
And that's, I've noticed that that's gotten me back full circle to this idea of, okay, I am one thought away.
Yeah. Yeah.
From everything that I've ever wanted, where maybe a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, I would have been like, I quit. Like, maybe I should just throw in the towel.
Yeah. Yeah, as you say that, I think a few thoughts go through my head and kind of what we're going through and where you put your focus and attention. And if it's of this thing of the things of this world relative to saying, okay, God, like you're my source, not like money is my source. And it's I think shaping character.
Yeah.
So whether you have money or you don't have money, how are you acting?
Yep.
And I think it's about the process of like what you're learning, not the destination,
Yeah.
but knowing like you're on the right, like I feel called to do this and I want to be great at it, but I also want to get there. And we've talked about this in the past of like, I want to get there and stay there.
Yeah.
I don't want to just get there and then, like lose it all or mess it up. And so I think through this process that we're both going through, it's like building the foundation. And I think it's our job to steward like the wisdom that God has given us
Yeah.
and to walk and live that out, but then also have like love, peace, patience, joy, kindness in the midst of it.
100%.
Because I think when things aren't going well, and I've noticed that because I'm a 4, if you guys don't know.
People like a 4 in relationship to what?
But it's so
the Enneagram.
the Enneagram. So I think it's so interesting though, because I know a couple other people that were similar. And when things aren't going well, we pull back. And it's like, as I have sat with that, it's like, that's like the last thing I should do. Is I should actually be around other people and say, hey, here's what I'm going through. Here's what's going on. Like, sometimes I need a new thought because the thoughts that I'm having are not serving me. And so watching some other people, and it's like I've actually reached out to a couple people and like they don't respond, and I get it, but I'm like, that's the worst thing you can do
Mm-hmm.
is stay excuse me, isolated with your own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
because your thoughts obviously aren't serving you.
Yeah.
And so to get out of your head, because once you're in your head, you're dead, is to one, share that and be a part of, have other people be a part of that conversation
Mm-hmm.
of like, here's where, it's like being vulnerable and inviting someone in where you're at and saying, I'm struggling. Like, here's where I'm at, and help me to have a new thought or a new idea, or point me in the direction, or a new connection. Like, let me have someone, here's what I'm looking for, like to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing to do when you don't think that you have it all together.
Well, and I think what's so interesting, I mean, is it goes back to this dang title, right? The power of your choice. So, you could go, well, man, this starts to be exhausting because do I need to be paying attention to every single choice that I make? Exactly. I mean,
Yes.
if you really think about it, that's the one thing, like the goodness of God in this is that number one, he had the end in mind when he started. So he knew how it was all going to pan out, right? So that means that even in the in between, the hardest of days, he knows how this all ends. But what I find fascinating about his goodness is that even when he set up Eden in this perfect environment, that he still gave Adam and Eve the power to choose. That to me is unconditional love. Of he didn't just give them only a good tree. That would have been a dictatorship, meaning like now you don't have a choice to love me, you just do. Like there would have been no setup for them to choose right because there is no wrong. And so I find it so fascinating that we have a God who loves us that much that he goes from the very beginning of time, I'm going to actually set up a system to where you will choose. Like I'm going to give you the power to choose life. And he says, I'm going to give you the power of life and death. Choose life. Like it's almost like he has to go one extra step because he knows that we are going to have the opportunity to choose death, to choose scarcity, to choose lack, to choose something different, pride, ego, anything else that's something to your point as our source. And yet he set us up with that example at the very beginning. And yet we actually don't spend a whole lot of conscious effort, time, or energy thinking about our choices. When really that's like, Malachi said this the other day. He's like, so you're telling me that Adam and Eve's choice, because we were talking about just like the realities of life sometimes, and that it's hard. And I think we were even talking about school and all the things you don't want to do. And he was like, so you're telling me that Adam and Eve had the choice and that ruined my life? He was like that caused me to now that he goes, because why don't I not get to live forever? And I said, well, it's Adam and Eve's choice. And he was like, it was like the world like exploded in his mind, because he's like, so you're telling me now I have to die because of one man's choice? And it was like in that moment, the minute he said it, I was like, exactly.
Yes.
Like the power of your choice it's that powerful. And yet, and we have it all day long. And yet we feel victim to our own choices. And then yet we don't see. So it's just like all of this is coming.
Oh, be careful. Oh, be careful. People don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that you are the sum of all your choices. Your life is a direct correlation in all aspects based off of your actions, which initiates from a thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 100% you.
Mm-hmm.
And so wherever you're at in life, if you don't have what you want, it's because of your thoughts and your actions.
So good. And it's even like, because I think what can immediately come up is this like, well, yeah, but you don't understand my situation. You don't understand what's happened to me. You don't understand, right? Which is this
Victim.
It's that victim, like passive, like actually they don't see the power. So what happens is I think the enemy, again, he's not smart, but he's not dumb in that he knows that the minute I get in the driver's seat and I see the power of my choice, I create collateral damage for the enemy because I understand that everything I want is on the other side of obedience and my yes to God.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he's like, okay, if I can get them in the driver's seat, feeling like they don't have a choice anymore, they will still choose, but they will choose death. Right. So it's like this subtle manipulation that gets us then not going 3 steps closer to gold. We keep moving 3 feet away from gold over and over and over again, wondering why we're not getting to where we want to be.
Yes. Most people surround themselves with people. Most people want to be right. So if they're having a problem, they go to people that make them feel okay to justify that they're right with whatever, like I'm trying to lose weight and I've tried everything. And the other person's like, oh, I'm so sorry.
You want to go get a burger?
Yeah, like, I'm so sorry, it's just your genetics,
Mhm.
and you're like, so most people surround themselves with people that are going to comfort their self-sabotaging behaviors
Mhm.
as opposed to challenge them and say, oh, that's interesting. Like, you've tried everything.
Tell me more.
Tell me more. Write down all the things that you've tried. Well, and I heard this from Tony Robbins. He's like, well, I've tried like a ton of things.
Mhm.
Well, awesome. Write those down. Okay, I've tried like 5 things. Okay, let me hear them. Okay, I've tried like one thing, like, and so like, but it's like we can talk ourselves into because that one or two things didn't work out,
Yeah.
or that one business didn't work out. And so I'm just, everybody should not do that business because I couldn't make it successful. Or I knew someone that couldn't do it. So then you're like, well, I can't do it either. And so we even stop ourselves before we even start trying.
Yeah.
So those are two different kind of thought
Well,
tracks right there.
so it's funny though, because what this also does is it the word that pops up for me is that word resiliency, which I think again is a really nice word that Hallmark would like put on a card, or we put on a mug of like, but I don't actually think that we live in a world that teaches you how to live resiliently. And so I feel like if I could define what resiliency is is truly I've really been tested in this lately. And so to me, resiliency is like the ability to keep going no matter what. And so for me, what it's looked like is looking at the worst case scenario, right? Like ultimately going, all right, I know what my dream is. I know I can see it clearly. I think that's step one, like have a dream that's bigger than this life to live for and be clear on that thing. But then step two is going, okay, the reality is like worst case scenario, which is where I think subconsciously why people don't keep going is because they don't actually do this part of the process. And so I've gotten myself to the very end of okay, worst case scenario. And it's almost like you finally go, all right, I'm going to make peace with that scenario. And you go, I'm still in.
Yeah.
Like at some level, if you can get yourself to the point of going, I lose it all. We're back in an RV, only this time not by choice. Like I have no money in the bank. I'm 30, almost 39 years old. Now what? And I've had to look at myself in the mirror and go, I would keep going. I would get up and I would do it again because actually I have everything that I need. I still have my message. Nobody can take that away. I still have my family. Nobody can take that away. I still have my burn for what I'm doing. So nobody can take that away. I'd still figure out how to work out and do push-ups outside because I've done that. Nobody can take that away. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. So there's the core things that nobody can take away from me. That's resiliency.
So then the worst is not as bad as
the worst is not as bad. You're like, that's still ideal.
make it up.
Yeah, you're like, it's still not
mind.
ideal, but at some level, I could still be in that place going, I will still have a heart that's burning for those things, and I would keep going.
Yeah.
And I think that's what creates resiliency. And if you can't get yourself to that point where you're like, well, I don't know if my family would be there, and I don't know if I know how to do push-ups, and I don't know all those things, and you're like, then you actually need to go back to step one and find that dream that's bigger than your life to live for. You need to be surrounded by people who would have nothing with you and that you would still feel like you have everything.
Yeah.
Figure out how to do push-up because like if you don't have a gym membership, please know how to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
go back to step one, get so clear on that. And then you've got to make peace with your fear. That's what I feel like creates that place of resiliency.
Yeah. And there again, it comes back to the mindset. So if you're not surrounded, if you're not one reading like the Bible and looking at scriptures or positive, planting new positive thoughts that you can like
anchor into,
it's going to be really hard for you in general. But it's like, I think what
Let me just speak to that. Can I just speak to that really quick? Because I think that this has also been the greatest change in my life in this last year, even after this whole arise and align and getting myself centered with God each day. You and I have been huge on this professional development for 10 years, right? Reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts. This is going to sound crazy, but I have not picked up, other than last month, one book all year long, but I've dove into the Word of God. And I think that part of that, I think when we get to the end of ourselves, I don't need fact anymore. I need truth. And so sometimes I think we hit this point in our life. Great. There's tons of facts out there. Please read the books, like be a learner. Like I get all the points, but there's a point in time where there's something I believe at the soul of all of us that's like, don't give me any more fact, give me truth. Like I have to anchor into truth because truth will set me free. And that's been my journey this last year, is I've actually had to disconnect from some of the facts, and I've had to get more anchored in truth. And it's been different now when I go to use facts, like, okay, but I'm anchored in truth using the facts. And that has been like a massive shift for me in this last year, where before I was fact, but my anchoring into truth wasn't as deep as it should have been, which is why my resiliency was shallow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it's both and. Because like with what I'm doing over the last year, it's like I'm seeking people that I feel like have the fruit in their life. They have the experience, they've been through the journey already, so I can expedite my learning curve. But then I also need to be rooted within like truth, and then put the two together. And to me, that makes a powerful combination, because if I can get the, wisdom from people that have gone before me that have success, and I can get the truth biblically,
fulfillment,
and combine those two, then I also feel like I can get discernment and wisdom from God, to then make my own path.
100%.
And so I think it's both and. So depending on what you're trying to accomplish, obviously, if you're trying to lose weight and you just read the Bible, it's probably not going to be super helpful.
I disagree because there is so much about scripture.
You can fast.
You
can
totally. You'd be fasting for 40 days,
I guess
and 40 nights.
If you
Daniel and his army, like they were told.
Well,
like,
if you follow it, you eat things from the earth.
Yes.
And you fast. And you're
there.
good. Okay.
It's really not that hard,
but I don't think he talks about push-ups and pull-ups.
No, but they walked everywhere. Like, look at all the times they're like, when it talks about like, Joshua, when he's like, and then they would promise. I mean, there's like 40 miles. Some days they
but
walk
there's
like
better ways.
40.
There you can get better results quicker than walking 40 miles.
The point, if people really want to lose weight, the Bible says eat less and walk more. Like they're, what I'm saying, like at some level. But it's so simple. I mean, the Bible speaks from such. If you really think about, how do you level up in your marriage? How do you level up in your finances? Like, if you really go back to the truth and the simplicity of scripture, like, it's not complex. It's just really stinking hard to do. And so I think our world has figured out the facts around truth to try to make it simpler. And I don't disagree with you, but I think that it's almost like, Tony Robbins says, we love you, Tony. Shout out to you today, all day long. That it says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. It's almost like fact without truth is the ultimate failure. Like doing all of the things and ultimately not being rooted in truth is the ultimate failure, because I think we crave, whether you're even a believer or not, all of us crave spiritual realities, like something that is like substance and tangible, right? And so I think the combo, you're right, is necessary, but I think it's like, which one are you asking to be your source? Which one's actually your anchor? Which one are you hanging your life on versus just using to enhance, right, the truth? So I just think it's a really interesting thing.
Well, going back to what you just said, like it hit me, because I think going through the process and the journey of like, what is your source and your character. And I think when you have resources that are getting drained and you're like, I don't understand this, I think there again, it's like redefining and defining where your attention is and who you are in the midst of it. Because if you're an unhappy person broke, you're probably going to be an unhappy person wealthy. And if you're a happy person broke, you should be a happy person wealthy. And so I think it's just there again, looking at, okay, like money is just a tool, it's a vehicle, but it's not like my source of how I feel. And I think what we're both experiencing is like, one, it's, putting it in context of like every day of like where I'm at is not where I'm going to be, and where I'm going is greater than what I've ever done before. And so I know I need to walk through and, time under tension and pressure to learn new skills, and habits and patterns to be able to not just get there, but to sustain it as well. And then making sure through the midst of this, my attitude is right. And there again, this is a practice. It's easy to say that, and there's frustrating time. It's just, we've worked on it for a long time. And so it's less and less. It could take you out. And there again, in the past, sharing our experience, I would turn to alcohol because I would want to hide. I would want to be like, well, I'll just check out. And, it was a busy or rough day or whatever. And then you drink, and then you eat. And then it's like this repetitive cycle. And so now that you have to feel the emotions, they're real. And you have to be like, okay, God, like I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
And I need wisdom. I need divine appointments. I need a better understanding because what I'm doing or how I'm doing it is not working.
Yeah.
And so I think it's yeah, that's good.
Well, and so this was the other day when we did church at home and we were listening to Steve Furtick, and it was called Ugly Truth. And it walked you to this point of just understanding how you ultimately surrender everything to God and you just do the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so even our community, like I've shared that a couple of times. And so as a community, the Dreamer community is now saying, what's just the next brave thing that you can do? And it helps you to look at that there are just times and seasons in our life that, to get through the day and just do the next brave thing is really challenging to do. And that's biblical too. Like God didn't say that we were going to have perfect days, but knowing that the power of your choice means that you are one decision away from everything you want, means the opposite, that you are one decision away from everything you don't want to. Like and it's black and white, like there is no gray. That is not a mute point. That is not like a passive statement. It is you are always constantly going towards or away from what you want at all the times. You're either moving towards truth or away from truth. And I think that when we can get the gray out of the way, it's going to make this simpler. Right. So ultimately it's like, okay, I have to choose no matter what. So I'm either going to move towards the prophetic. I'm going to move towards the things that God has for me, or I'm going to move away from that with my choice. So the question lately has been, what is the next brave thing that I can do? And what it does is it feels like it just causes you to have to consciously reconcile the fact that, yep, this could feel vulnerable. This could be scary, but it's what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can catch yourself in that loop and like turn it to go the other direction, that it builds the momentum to take you to where you want to go. Like you're going to build momentum either way. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Right. And so like, even, let me give you an example. So like Cammie even called me the other night, like freaking out because she physically saw her old patterns of a loop. And she called me and was like, I didn't do it. Like I literally caught it in the moment and I was able to reroute my loop. And I realized the power of my choice. And it's those moments that you go, it's not just information. It becomes transformation because you watch yourself make a different decision real time. And all of a sudden you're like, I did that,
I want off this roller coaster.
Yeah, you're like, and then you get off of it and you start going the other way and you're like, oh my gosh, this is for real. And I can see now how I can make different choices. That to me, that moment is like a game changer.
That's the pivot to,
it's the
pivot to conscious living.
Yeah, 100%.
And understanding like, okay, I made this choice before and I got this result. I want to get off this roller coaster and I want a different result. So I've got to make a different choice.
Yeah.
And I've been saying it differently, but similar. Like if I wasn't afraid, what would I do? And so if I'm afraid of something, I look at it and say, it's probably more likely the thing I should do.
Yeah.
And so it's stepping into those moments every day of like, okay, today, what am I afraid to do? And overcoming those. And it's just those little wins each day that start to compound.
Yeah.
And you're like, that really wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And then
if you've already made peace with the worst case scenario, at some level, you're like, oh, okay, like I've already made peace with the worst case scenario. I'm en route, which to your point is really the premise of hope, right? That's what you're talking about is hope, is if I'm getting up every single day, being connected to the next choice is the choice that leads me to where I want to be. That's what hope is. Hope is, look at this biblical definition. It's not a desire for something good to happen. That's not hope, which I love that. Hope is not the desire for something good to happen. It is the confident expectation that something good will happen, which it's just that like subtle shift is that you're not like, it is not a desire for something good to happen. It's a confident expectation and a knowing that it does.
Yeah.
I find that so fascinating.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
So let me ask you this.
Yes.
Today, if you weren't afraid, what's one thing that you would do?
I already did it.
What was it?
I'm doing it.
Is it the podcast? Is it doing the podcast?
I'm here. I'm here, guys.
You're welcome.
I'm so fearful. No, I think the podcast, honestly, it gives me an opportunity for us to catch up. And two.
You know, it's so funny though. I had a girlfriend text me the other day. She's like, when do you and Travis connect? I was like, our podcast.
I think some of the, we talk through some of these thoughts and ideas, but it gives us a more in-depth, like we get to kind of peel back the layers of some of them. But I
So
think
if you're at home and you're not connecting with your spouse, start a podcast and just have it.
just record it, put it out there. Is, one of the things also that sticks out to me is, and I think about often, is like, how resourceful am I going to be? Like, how bad do I want it? Whatever it is. And it's like, if you're willing to be resourceful and be courageous and brave and not let fear stop you, you're going to pick up the phone. You're going to have the conversation. You're going to send the email. You're going to do the hard workout. You're going to stay consistent with the hard workout. Like, how resourceful am I going to be to get what I want? And I think that's that. And if, what am I afraid of, is like how I kind of process the day now.
Interesting.
And so as I move forward, I'm making decisions based off of like, there's certain days where you're like, I feel like the weight of the world is on me. And I feel like, all the negative thoughts that could come in, like, all of them.
He almost just went there.
And I think if you, there again, you say, okay, like, I hear you.
Yeah.
Evil me, enemy. And then you look at truth, and then you say, okay, like, I know the things I need to do, and they feel like 1,000 pounds to make that actual step. But if I can just peel back the layers, and there again, I think most of the time we look at the big picture as opposed to the micro, and just saying, okay, like, the next step. What is stopping me from even just taking that next
totally. I mean,
step?
It's like, what's the next brave thing? I mean, so that's what I've done truly for the last couple of months. When I feel the weight of the world, and I have in a lot of different ways, the weight of the blessing and the weight of like the gaps, right? All of us have these gaps in our life. I've honestly gotten myself to this point of going, okay, JJ, like, just the next brave thing. And sometimes that's sitting, this week it was turning off my phone and all my emails, and I just sat all day and I did homeschool with the kids. That was the next brave thing, because easily I could have gone to this place of like, you got to make more phone calls. You got to grind it out. You need to be on your email. You can't do that. Like, I would have done all. And I was like, that is not the next brave thing. The next brave thing for me is to be so present with my kids, to be leading them from a place of abundance, even though I'm feeling all of the feels. But by the end of the day, sure enough, like, the grip of fear, all of that had gone away because I just did the next brave thing. And that's what it was. And so I feel like, even just on the daily, and to you who are listening, if you find yourself in the battle or in the unknown or whatever it might be, I want to encourage you in that one, you're not alone, and you don't have to stay there, that you truly are one thought away. You're one choice away. And it could start as simple as, what's the next brave thing that I need to do today? The next brave thing. And watch over time as that becomes just a more normal question that helps you take that next step, which leads to the next one, which ultimately gets you past that point of quitting breakthrough and gets you on the other side of breakthrough. Like,
yep. And then there's different levels. There again, like, this isn't the first time that we've experienced. I think it's the first time that we've experienced this together. But it's like, there's going to be more. And there again, coming back to like how we handle this, knowing that there's going to be more. And that's our next podcast, I think.
Oh yeah, you should tune in.
And that we'll dive deeper into that too, because it's not like, if you avoid whatever it is that you're avoiding, like, you'll be in the same spot in 5-10 years and wishing and thinking, man, I wish I would have just made that decision, or this hard decision 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and what I think is interesting, and that has been running through my head this time around, is, the last couple of years has been, you can do hard things. You can do hard things. And this time it's just been, no, you can do hard things well. Because at some level, we're all doing hard things, but not everybody's doing them in character. You look back and you're like, crap, that I did not, I am so sorry. And man, I just bulldozed through people, and I was angry, or I was short, or I tapped out, or I was drinking the whole time. A lot of us are doing hard things. We're just not doing them well. And so it's like, I want to do this well. I want to be in the pressure, and I want it to reveal character that makes it look like my heart isn't hard, but I know it's hard. But I don't want my character to reflect that. I want it to be on point with who God says I am.
Yeah.
Not just in response to the pressure that I'm feeling.
But okay, like, maybe we'll do a different podcast on this. But as you say that, I think there's different hard, but it's also, are you playing defense or are you playing offense? I think a lot of people get stuck in playing defense as opposed to having it hard and playing offense.
Sure.
And so it's like the self-limiting beliefs and the, like victim mentality, and it's just a like repetitive cycle.
Yeah.
But they're playing defense. They're not even playing offense.
Yeah.
So it's a different game also that we're talking about.
Right. But I would even say, I mean, even if you just try to lower the playing field around like call hard, like all of us have a different definition of what hard is. All of us would. So if I even say like we're all doing hard things, immediately everyone would define hard totally differently.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if we're just even kind of like lower the playing field and say, regardless of who you are, we're all doing hard. But my question is, are we like that would be the goal?
Totally. But yes. And I think the thought is, are you the hard that you have, are you playing it defensively or offensively? Like if you were to put that in perspective, as far as like what we're doing,
Right.
like we're going hard and we're picking a hard that we're going after, as opposed to
but don't you think you need, oh my gosh, Ray, this is a whole nother podcast. We're gonna close this loop here and then maybe start another one another day. But like what is it? I don't know who says this, but it's that offense sells the tickets, defense wins the game. So at some level, right, like you have to be playing both. Oh, at all. Like that's what listen, I'm an expert in sports. So really what I want you to know about what I'm about to say is that you should take notes. But if you look at it, I mean, like you have to have both in a game. And it's not like offense players don't play defense and defense players don't play offense. Like there are different mindsets. And so even if I look at the structure of our company, you've got visionaries, integrators, and implementers. And I can see some people who are very, very, very proactive. And I have some on the team that are very, very, very more reactive. I see some people that see solutions and some people that actually see the problems. And so it's like, it's interesting to see that like, okay, we make up the team, the body, right? And some of us are wired for offense. Some of us are more wired for the defense. But when you put it together, right now, you actually get to excel in the spiritual gifts that you've been given in a culture and an environment that allows those things to excel. So I guess we're talking about so many of the same words, but have very different expressions.
But that's all offense. The way you were doing your business for the last 5 years was very defensively. You had coaching clients and you met people.
No, I disagree.
You met people. It wasn't like
we're like doing a whole nother
podcast
right
I know.
We should probably
so end it. But I think what you're talking
defense.
about
I don't know what he's talking
is
about.
going offensively and hiring people. Like you're going towards something totally new, as opposed to
define offense.
Sitting there and having your clients and meeting a client through another client through another client. That's very like defensively, as opposed to how proactive you're being to build what you're building. And until next time,
we're fighting right now. I want you guys to know we're agreeing to disagree. We don't even know what we're talking about. I don't even know what we were talking about. But here's what we want to encourage you. Till next time, we've got good stuff that we're going to talk about. We're talking about offense and defense. We'll be talking about basketball and football and soccer.
Rugby, no. We're going to talk about rugby and UFC.
Oh, and Travis will be doing that podcast on his own.
And putt-putt golf.
Is there offense and defense on that?
No. I don't understand what you're talking about.
I don't either. Okay, great. So here's what we'll encourage you. You're one thought away, one choice away, one decision away from everything that you ever wanted. And we want to encourage you, just do the next brave thing. And we'll see you on the top of the mountain. Till next time, dream on.